Look Up by Pamela S. Vining, aka J.C. Yule. Christian, look up. Thy feet may slide. This is a slippery way, yet one who is walking by thy side, whose arms should be thy stay. Thou canst not see that blessed form, nor view that loving smile, with eager eyes thus earthward bent. Christian, look up a while. Christian, look up. What seest thou here to court thy anxious eyes? Earth is beneath thee, lone and drear, above thy native skies. Beneath the wreck of faded bloom, the shadow and the clod, the broken reed, the open tomb, above thee is thy God. Look up. Thy head too long has been. Bow darkly toward the earth, thou son of a most royal sire, creature of kingly birth. What? Dragging like a very slave earth's heavy galling chain, and struggling onward to the grave in weariness and pain? What wouldst thou with this world? Thy home, thy country is not here. Mid faded flowers and perished bloom, and shadows dense and drear. Thy home is where the tree of life waves high its fruitage blessed, mid bowers with fadeless beauties rife. Look up and claim thy rest. Oh, Let Me Dream the Dreams of Long Ago by Hanford Lennox Gordon. Call me not back, O cold and crafty world. I scorn your thankless thanks and hollow praise. Wiser than seer or scientist content to tread no path beyond these bleeding hills. Here let me lie beneath this dear old elm, among the blossoms of the clover fields, and listen to the humming of the bees, here in those far-off happy boyhood years, when all my world was bounded by these hills. I dreamed my first dreams underneath this elm. Dreamed, I, and builded castles in the clouds. Dreamed and made glad a fond, proud mother's heart, now mouldering into clay on yonder hill. Dreamed till my daydreams paved the world with gold. Dreamed till my mad dreams made one desolate. Dreamed, O my soul, and was it all a dream? As I lay dreaming under this old elm, building my castles in the sunny clouds, her soft eyes peeping from the copse of pine, looked tenderly on me, and my glad heart leaped, following her footsteps. Oh, the dream, the dream! O fawn-eyed, lotus-lipped, white-bosomed floor! I hide my bronze face in your golden hair. Thou wilt not heed the dewdrops on my beard. Thou wilt not heed the wrinkles on my brow. Thou wilt not chide me for my long delay. Here we stood heart to heart and eye to eye, and I looked down into her inmost soul, the while she drank my promise like sweet wine. Oh, let me dream the dreams of long ago. Soft are the tender eyes of maiden love. Sweet are the dewdrops of a dear girl's lips, when love's red roses blush in sudden bloom. Oh, let me dream the dreams of long ago. Hum soft and low, O bee-bent clover fields, blink blue-eyed violets from the dewy grass. Break into bloom, my golden dandelions, break into bloom, my dear old apple trees. I hear the robins chirrup on the hedge. I hear the warbling of the meadowlarks. I hear the silver-fluted whippoorwill. I hear the harps that moan among the pines, touched by the ghostly fingers of the dead. Hush, let me dream the dreams of long ago. And wherefore left I these fair flowery fields, where her fond eyes and ever gladsome voice made all the year one joyous warbling June, to chase my castles in the passing clouds, false as the mirage of some Indian isle, to shipwrecked sailors famished on the brine. Wherefore look out upon the babbling world, fools clamoring at the heels of clamorous fools. I hungered for the sapless husks of fame, dreaming I saw beyond my native hills the sunshine shimmer on the laurel trees. Ah, tenderly played her fond eyes brimmed with tears. But lightly laughing at her fears I turned, eager to clutch my crown of laurel leaves, strong-souled and bold to front all winds of heaven. A lamb and lion molded into one, and burst away to tread the hollow world. Ah, nut-brown boys that tend the lowing kine, ah, blithesome ploughmen whistling on the glebe, ah, merry mowers singing in the swaths, sweet simple souls contented not to know, wiser are ye, and ye may teach the wise. Years trode upon the heels of flying years, and still my ignis fatuus flew before. On thorny paths my eager feet pursued, till she whose fond heart doted on my dreams passed painless into the pure eternal peace. Years trode upon the heels of flying years, and touched my brown beard with their silver wands, and still my ignis fatuus flew before. Through thorns and mire my torn feet followed still, till she, my darling unforgotten floor, nursing her one hope all those weary years, waiting my tardy coming, drooped and died. I hear her low sweet voice among the pines. Oh, let me dream the dreams of long ago. I see her fond eyes peeping from the pines. Oh, let me dream the dreams of long ago, and hide my bronze face in her golden hair. Is this the Indian summer of my days? Wealth without care and love without desire. O misty, cheerless moon of falling leaves, is this the fruitage promised by the spring? O blighted clusters withering on the vine, O promised lips of love to one who dreams, and wakens holding but the hollow air. Let me dream on less, dead unto my dead, false to the true and true unto the false, maddened by thoughts of that which might have been, and weary of the chains of that which is. I slake my heart thirst at forbidden springs. I hear the voices of the moaning pines. I hear the low hushed whispers of the dead, and one wan face looks in upon my dreams, and wounds me with her sad, imploring eyes. The dead sun sinks beyond the misty hills. The chill winds whistle in the leafless elms. The cold rain patters on the fallen leaves. Where pipes the silver-fluted whippoorwill? I hear no hum of bees among the bloom. I hear no robin chirrup on the hedge. One dumb lone lark sits shivering in the rain. I hear the voices of the autumn wind. I hear the cold rain dripping on the leaves. I hear the moaning of the mournful pines. I hear the hollow voices of the dead. Oh, let me dream the dreams of long ago, and dreaming pass into the dreamless sleep, beyond the voices of the autumn winds, beyond the patter of the dreary rain, beyond compassion and all vain regret, beyond all waking and all weariness. Oh, let me dream the dreams of long ago. The Mark of the Beast by Rudyard Kipling. Your gods and my gods, do you or I know which are the stronger? Native proverb. East of Suez, some hold, the direct control of providence ceases, man being there handed over to the power of the gods and devils of Asia, and the Church of England Providence only exercising an occasional and modified supervision in the case of Englishmen. This theory accounts for some of the more unnecessary horrors of life in India. It may be stretched to explain my story. My friend Strickland of the police, who knows as much of natives of India as is good for any man, can bear witness to the facts of the case. Dumois, our doctor, also saw what Strickland and I saw. The inference which he drew from the evidence was entirely correct. He is dead now. He died in a rather curious manner, which has been elsewhere described. When Fleet came to India, he owned a little money and some land in the Himalayas near a place called Dharmasala. Both properties had been left him by an uncle, and he came out to finance them. He was a big, heavy, genial, and inoffensive man. His knowledge of natives was, of course, limited, and he complained of the difficulties of the language. He rode in from his place in the hills to spend New Year in the station, and he stayed with Strickland. On New Year's Eve there was a big dinner at the club, and the night was excusably wet. When men foregather from the uttermost ends of the empire, they have a right to be riotous. The frontier had sent down a contingent of Cachamalivos, who had not seen 20 white faces for a year, and were used to ride 15 miles to dinner at the next fort at the risk of a Kibbery bullet where their drinks should lie. They profited by their new security, for they tried to play pool with a curled-up hedgehog found in the garden, and one of them carried the marker round the room in his teeth. Half a dozen planters had come in from the south and were talking horses to the biggest liar in Asia, who was trying to cap all their stories at once. Everybody was there, and there was a general closing up of ranks and taking stock of our losses in dead or disabled that had fallen during the past year. It was a very wet night, and I remember that we sang Auld Lang Syne with our feet in the Polo Championship Cup and our heads among the stars, and swore that we were all dear friends. Then some of us went away and annexed Burma, and some tried to open up the Sudan and were opened up by fuzzies in that cruel scrub outside Suakim. And some found stars and medals, and some were married, which was bad, and some did other things which were worse, and the others of us stayed in our chains and strove to make money on insufficient experiences. Fleet began the night with sherry and bitters, drank champagne steadily up to dessert, then raw rasping Capri with all the strength of whiskey, took Benedictine with his coffee, 4 or 5 whiskeys and sodas to improve his pool strokes, beer and bones at 2:30, winding up with old brandy. Consequently, when he came out at 3:30 in the morning into 14 degrees of frost, he was very angry with his horse for coughing, and tried to leapfrog into the saddle. The horse broke away and went to his stables, so Strickland and I formed a guard of dishonor to take Fleet home. Our road lay through the bazaar, close to a little temple of Hanuman, the monkey god, who is a leading divinity worthy of respect. All gods have good points, just as have all priests. Personally, I attach much importance to the Hanuman, and am kind to his people, the great gray apes of the hills. One never knows when one may want a friend. There was a light in the temple, and as we passed we could hear voices of men chanting hymns. In a native temple, the priests rise at all hours of the night to do honor to their god. Before we could stop him, Fleet dashed up the steps, patted 2 priests on the back, and was gravely grinding the ashes of his cigar butt into the forehead of the red stone image of Hanuman. Strickland tried to drag him out, but he sat down and said solemnly, "See that? Mark of the beast. Made it. Isn't it fine?" In half a minute, the temple was alive and noisy, and Strickland, who knew that came of polluting a god, said that things might occur. He, by virtue of his official position, long residence in the country, and weakness for going among the natives, was known to the priests, and he felt unhappy. Fleet sat on the ground and refused to move. He said that good old Hanuman made a very soft pillow. Then, without any warning, a silver man came out of a recess behind the image of the god. He was perfectly naked in that bitter, bitter cold, and his body shone like frosted silver, for he was what the Bible calls a leper as white as snow. Also, he had no face, because he was a leper of some years' standing, and his disease was heavy upon him. We too stooped to haul Fleet up, and the temple was filling and filling with folk who seemed to spring from the earth. when the silver man ran in under our arms, making a noise exactly like the mewing of an otter, caught Fleet round the body, and dropped his head on Fleet's breast before we could wrench him away. Then he retired to a corner and sat mooing while the crowd blocked all the doors. The priests were very angry until the silver man touched Fleet. That nuzzling seemed to sober them. At the end of a few minutes' silence, one of the priests came to Strickland and said, in perfect English, "Take your friend away. He has done with Hanuman, but Hanuman has not done with him." The crowd gave room, and we carried Fleet into the road. Strickland was very angry. He said that we might all three have been knifed, and that Fleet should thank his stars that he had escaped without injury. Fleet thanked no one. He said that he wanted to go to bed. He was gorgeously drunk. We moved on, Strickland silent and wrathful, until Fleet was taken with violent shivering fits and sweating. He said that the smells of the bazaar were overpowering, and he wondered why slaughterhouses were permitted so near English residences. "Can't you smell the blood?" said Fleet. We put him to bed at last, just as the dawn was breaking, and Strickland invited me to have another whiskey and soda. While we were drinking, he talked of the trouble in the temple, admitted that it baffled him completely. Strickland hates being mystified by natives, because his business in life is to overmatch them with their own weapons. He has not yet succeeded in doing this, but in 15 or 20 years he will have made some small progress. "They should have mauled us," he said, "instead of mewing at us. I wonder what they meant. I don't like it one little bit." I said that the managing committee of the temple would in all probability bring a criminal action against us for insulting their religion. There was a section of the Indian penal code which exactly met Fleet's offense. Strickland said he had only hoped and prayed that they would do this. Before I left, I looked into Fleet's room and saw him lying on his right side, scratching his left breast. Then I went to bed cold, depressed, and unhappy at 7 o'clock in the morning. At 1 o'clock, I rode over to Strickland's house to inquire after Fleet's head. I imagined that it would be a sore one. Fleet was breakfasting and seemed unwell. His temper was gone, for he was abusing the cook for not supplying him with an underdone chop. A man who can eat raw meat after a wet night is a curiosity. I told Fleet this, and he laughed. "You breed queer mosquitoes in these parts," he said. "I've been bitten to pieces, but only in one place." "Let's have a look at that bite," said Strickland. "It may have gone down since this morning." While the chops were being cooked, Fleet opened his shirt and showed us just over his left breast a mark, the perfect bubble of the black rosettes, the 5 or 6 irregular blotches arranged in a circle on a leopard's hide. Strickland looked and said, "It was only pink this morning. It's grown black now." Fleet ran to a glass. "By Jove," he said, "this is nasty. What is it?" We could not answer. Here the chops came in, all red and juicy, and Fleet bolted 3 in a most offensive manner. He ate on his right grinders only, and he chewed his head over his right shoulder as he snapped the meat. When he had finished, it struck him that he had been behaving strangely, for he said apologetically, "I don't think I ever felt so hungry in my life. I've bolted like an ostrich." After breakfast, Strickland said to me, "Don't go. Stay here, and stay for the night." Seeing that my house was not 3 miles from Strickland's, this request was absurd, but Strickland insisted, and was going to say something when Fleet interrupted by declaring in a shamefaced way that he felt hungry again. Strickland sent a man to my house to fetch over my bedding and a horse, and we 3 went down to Strickland's stables to pass the hours until it was time to go out for a ride. The man who has a weakness for horses never wearies of inspecting them, and when 2 men are killing time in this way, they gather knowledge and lies the one from the other. There were 5 horses in the stables, and I shall never forget the scene as we tried to look them over. They seemed to have gone mad. They reared and screamed and nearly tore up their pickets. They sweated and shivered and lathered and were distraught with fear. Strickland's horses used to know him as well as his dogs, which made the matter more curious. We left the stable for fear of the brutes of throwing themselves in their panic. Then Strickland turned back and called me. The horses were still frightened, but they let us gentle and make much of them and put their heads in our bosoms. They aren't afraid of us, said Strickland. Do you know, I'd give 3 months' pay if Outrage here could talk. But Outrage was dumb and could only cuddle up to his master and blow out his nostrils, as is the custom of horses when they wish to explain things but can't. Fleet came up when we were in the stalls, and as soon as the horses saw him, their fright broke out afresh. It was all that we could do to escape from the place unkicked. Strickland said, "They don't seem to love you, Fleet." "Nonsense," said Fleet. "My mare will follow me like a dog." He went to her. She was in a loose box, but as he slipped the bars, she plunged, knocked him down, and broke away into the garden. I laughed, but Strickland was not amused. He took his mustache in both fists and pulled at it till it nearly came out. Fleet, instead of going off to chase property, yawned, saying that he felt sleepy. He went to the house to lie down, which was a foolish way of spending New Year's Day. Strickland sat with me in the stables and asked if I had noticed anything peculiar in Fleet's manner. I said that he ate his food like a beast, but that this might have been the result of living alone in the hills out of the reach of society, as refined and elevating as ours, for instance. Strickland was not amused. I do not think that he listened to me, for his next sentence referred to the mark on Fleet's breast, and I said that it might have been caused by blister flies, or that it was possibly a birthmark newly born and now visible for the first time. We both agreed that it was unpleasant to look at, and Strickland found occasion to say that I was a fool. "I can't tell you what I think now," said he, "because you would call me a madman, but you must stay with me for the next few days, if you can. I want you to watch Fleet, but don't tell me what you think till I have made up my mind." "But I am dining out tonight," I said. "So am I," said Strickland, "and so is Fleet, at least if he doesn't change his mind." We walked about the garden smoking, but saying nothing, because we were friends and talking spoils good tobacco, till our pipes were out. Then we went to wake up Fleet. He was wide awake and fidgeting about his room. "I say, I want some more chops," he said. "Can I get them?" We laughed and said, "Go and change. The ponies will be round in a minute." "All right," said Fleet. "I'll go when I get the chops. Underdone one's mind." He seemed to be quite in earnest. It was 4 o'clock, and we had breakfast at 1. Still, for a long time he demanded those underdone chops. Then he changed into riding clothes and went out into the veranda. His pony, the mare, had not been caught, would not let him come near. All 3 horses were unmanageable, mad with fear, and finally Fleet said that he would stay at home and get something to eat. Strickland and I rode out wondering. As we passed the temple of Hanuman, the silver man came out and mooed at us. "He is not one of the regular priests of the temple," said Strickland. "I think I should peculiarly like to lay my hands on him." There was no spring in our gallop on the race course that evening. The horses were stale and moved as though they had been ridden out. "The fright after breakfast has been too much for them," said Strickland. That was the only remark he made through the remainder of the ride. Once or twice I think he swore to himself, but that did not count. We came back in the dark at 7 o'clock and saw that there were no lights in the bungalow. "Careless ruffians my servants are," said Strickland. My horse reared at something on the carriage drive, and Fleet stood up under its nose. "What are you doing, groveling about the garden?" said Strickland. But both horses bolted and nearly threw us. We dismounted by the stables and returned to Fleet, who was on his hands and knees under the orange bushes. "What's the devil's wrong with you?" said Strickland. Nothing in the world," said Fleet, speaking very quickly and thickly. I've been gardening, botanizing, you know. The smell of the earth is delightful. I think I'm going for a walk, a long walk all night. Then I saw that there was something excessively out of order somewhere, and I said to Strickland, I am not dining out. Bless you, said Strickland. Here, Fleet, get up. You'll catch fever there. Come in to dinner, and let's have the lamps lit. We'll all dine at home. Fleet stood up unwillingly and said, No lamps, no lamps. It's much nicer here. Let's dine outside and have some more chops, lots of 'em, and underdone, bloody ones with gristle. Now a December evening in northern India is bitterly cold, and Fleet's suggestion was that of a maniac. Come in, said Strickland sternly. Come in at once. Fleet came, and when the lamps were brought, we saw that he was literally plastered with dirt from head to foot. He must have been rolling in the garden. He shrank from the light and went to his room. His eyes were horrible to look at. There was a green light behind them, not in them, if you understand, and the man's lower lip hung down. Strickland said, There's going to be trouble, big trouble tonight. Don't you change your writing things. We waited and waited for Fleet's reappearance and ordered dinner in the meantime. We could hear him moving about his own room, but there was no light there. Presently from the room came the long-drawn howl of a wolf. People write and talk lightly of blood running cold and hair standing up and things of that kind. Both sensations are too horrible to be trifled with. My heart stopped as though a knife had been driven through it, and Strickland turned as white as the tablecloth. The howl was repeated, and was answered by another howl far across the fields. That set the gilded roof on the horror. Strickland dashed into Fleet's room. I followed, and we saw Fleet getting out of the window. He made beast noises in the back of his throat. He could not answer when we shouted at him. He spat. I don't quite remember what followed, but I think that Strickland must have stunned him with the long boot jack, or else I could never have been able to sit on his chest. Fleet could not speak. He could only snarl, and his snarls were those of a wolf, not of a man. The human spirit must have been giving way all day and have died out with the twilight. We were dealing with a beast that had once been Fleet. The affair was beyond any human and rational experience. I tried to say hydrophobia, but the word wouldn't come, because I knew that I was lying. We bound this beast with leather thongs of the punka rope, and tied its thumbs and big toes together, and gagged it with a shoehorn, which makes a very efficient gag if you know how to arrange it. Then we carried it into the dining room and sent a man to Dumois, the doctor telling him to come over at once. After we had dispatched the messenger and were drawing breath, Strickland said, It's no good. This isn't any doctor's work. I also knew that he spoke the truth. The beast's head was free, and it threw it about from side to side. Anyone entering the room would have believed that we were curing a wolf's pelt. That was the most loathsome accessory of all. Strickland sat with his chin in the heel of his fists, watching the beast as it wriggled on the ground, but saying nothing. The shirt had been torn open in the scuffle and showed the black rosette mark on the left breast. It stood out like a blister. In the silence of the watching, we heard something without mewing, like a she-otter. We both rose to our feet, and I answer for myself, not Strickland, felt sick, actually and physically sick. We told each other, as did the men in Pinafore, that it was the cat. Dumois arrived, and I never saw a little man so unprofessionally shocked. He said that it was a heart-rending case of hydrophobia, and nothing could be done. At least any palliative measures would only prolong the agony. The beast was foaming at the mouth. Fleet, as we told Dumois, had been bitten by dogs once or twice. Any man who keeps half a dozen terriers must expect a nip now and again. Dumois could offer no hope. He could only certify that Fleet was dying of hydrophobia. The beast was then howling, for it had managed to spit out the shoehorn.
The muss said that he would be ready to certify to the cause of death and that the end was certain. He was a good little man, and he offered to remain with us. But Strickland refused the kindness. He did not wish to poison Dumas' New Year. He would only ask him not to give the real cause of Fleet's death to the public. So Dumas left, deeply agitated, and as soon as the noise of the cart wheels had died away, Strickland told me in a whisper his suspicions. They were so wildly improbable that he dared not say them out loud, and I, who entertained all Strickland's beliefs, was so ashamed of owning to them that I pretended to disbelieve. Even if the Silver Man had bewitched Fleet for polluting the image of Hanuman, the punishment could not have fallen so quickly. As I was whispering this, the cry outside the house rose again, and the beast fell into a fresh paroxysm of struggling till we were afraid that the thongs that had held it would give away. "Watch," said Strickland. "If this happens 6 times, I shall take the law into my own hands. I order you to help me." He went into his room and came out in a few minutes with the barrels of an old shotgun, a piece of fishing line, some thick cord, and his heavy wooden bedstead. I reported that convulsions had followed the cry by 2 seconds in each case, and the beast seemed perceptibly weaker. Strickland muttered, "But he can't take away the life. He can't take away the life." I said, though I knew that I was arguing against myself, "It may be a cat. It must be a cat. If the Silver Man is responsible, why does he dare to come here?" Strickland arranged the wood on the hearth, but put the gun barrels into the glow of the fire, spread the twine on the table, and broke a walking stick in 2. There was 1 yard of fishing line, but gut lapped with wire, such as is used for mahseer fishing, and he tied the 2 ends together in a loop. Then he said, "How can we catch him? He must be taken alive and unhurt." I said that we must trust in Providence, and go out softly with pillow sticks into the shrubbery at the front of the house. The man or animal that made the cry was evidently moving around the house as regularly as a night watchman. We could wait in the bushes till he came by and knock him over. Strickland accepted this suggestion, and we slipped out from a bathroom window into the front veranda, and then across the carriage drive into the bushes. In the moonlight, we could see the leper coming around the corner of the house. He was perfectly naked, and from time to time he mewed and stopped to dance with his shadow. It was an unattractive sight, and thinking of poor Fleet, brought to such degradation by so foul a creature, I put away all my doubts and resolved to help Strickland from the heated gun barrels to the loop of twine from the loins to the head and back again, with all tortures that might be needful. The leper halted in the front porch for a moment, and we jumped out on him with the sticks. He was wonderfully strong, and we were afraid that he might escape or be fatally injured before we caught him. We had an idea that lepers were frail creatures, but this proved to be incorrect. Strickland knocked his legs from under him, and I put my foot on his neck. He mewed hideously, and even though my riding boots, I could feel that his flesh was not the flesh of a clean man. He struck at us with his hand and feet stumps. We looped the lash of a dog whip around him, under the armpits, and dragged him backwards into the hall, and so into the dining room where the beast lay. There we tied him with the trunk straps. He made no attempt to escape, but mewed. When we confronted him with the beast, the scene was beyond description. The beast doubled backwards into a bow as though he had been poisoned with strychnine, and moaned in the most pitiable fashion. Several other things happened also, but they cannot be put down here. "I think I was right," said Strickland. "Now we will ask him to cure this case." But the leper only mewed. Strickland wrapped towel around his hand and took the gun barrels out of the fire. I put the half of the broken walking stick round the loop of fishing line, and buckled the leper comfortably to Strickland's bedstead. I understood than how men and women and little children can endure to see a witch burn alive. For the beast was moaning on the floor, and through the silver man had no face. You could see horrible feelings passing through the slab that took its place, exactly as waves of heat play across red-hot iron, gun barrels for instance. Strickland shaded his eyes with his hands for a moment, and we got to work. This part is not to be printed. The dawn was beginning to break when the leper spoke. His mewings had not been satisfactory up to that point. The beast had fainted from his exhaustion, and the house was very still. We unstrapped the leper and told him to take away the evil spirit. He crawled to the beast and laid his hand upon the left breast. That was all. Then he fell face down and whined, drawing in his breath as he did so. We watched the face of the beast and saw the soul of Fleet coming back into the eyes. Then a sweat broke out on the forehead. In the eyes, they were human eyes, closed. We waited for an hour, but Fleet still slept. We carried him to his room and bade the leper go, giving him the bedstead and the sheet on the bedstead to cover his nakedness, the gloves and the towels with which he had touched him, and the whip that had been hooked around his body. We put the sheet around him and went out into the early morning without speaking or mewing. Strickland wiped his face and sat down. A night gong far away in the city made 7 o'clock. "Exactly 24 hours," said Strickland, "and I've done enough to ensure my dismissal from the service, besides permanent quarters in a lunatic asylum. Do you believe that we are awake?" The red-hot gun barrel had fallen on the floor and was singeing the carpet. The smell was entirely real. That morning at 11, we two together went to wake up Fleet. They looked and saw that the black leopard rosette on his chest had disappeared. He was very drowsy and tired, but as soon as he saw us, he said, "Oh, confound you fellows, Happy New Year to you. Never mix your liquors, I'm nearly dead." "Thanks for your kindness, but you're overtime," said Strickland. "Today is the morning of the 2nd. You slept the clock round with a vengeance." The door opened, and little Dumois put his head in. He had come on foot, and fancied that we were laving out Fleet. "I've brought a nurse," said Dumois. "I suppose that she can come in for what is necessary." "By all means," said Fleet cheerily, sitting up in bed. "Bring on your nurses." Dumois was dumb. Strickland led him out and explained that there must have been a mistake in the diagnosis. Dumois remained dumb and left the house hastily. He considered that his professional reputation had been injured, and was inclined to make a personal matter of the recovery. Strickland went out too. When he came back, he said they had been to call on the temple of Hanuman to offer redress for the pollution of the god, and had been solemnly assured that no white man had ever touched the idol, and that he was an incarnation of all the virtues laboring under a delusion. "What do you think?" said Strickland. I said, "There are more things." But Strickland hates that quotation. He says that I have worn it threadbare. One other curious thing happened which frightened me as much as anything in all the night's work. When Fleet was dressed, he came to the dining room and sniffed. He had a quaint trick of moving his nose when he sniffed. "Horrid doggy smell here," said he. "You should really keep these terriers of yours in better order. Try sulphur, Strick." But Strickland did not answer. He caught hold of the back of a chair and without warning went into an amazing fit of hysterics. It's terrible to see a strong man overtaken with hysteria. Then it struck me that we had fought for Fleet's soul with the Silverman in that room, and had disgraced ourselves as Englishmen forever, and I laughed and gasped and gurgled just as shamefully as Strickland, while Fleet thought that we had both gone mad. We never told him what we had done. Some years later, when Strickland had married and was a church-going member of society for his wife's sake, we reviewed the incident dispassionately, and Strickland suggested that I should put it before the public. I cannot myself see that this step is likely to clear up the mystery, because in the first place no one will believe a rather unpleasant story, And in the second, it is well known to every right-minded man that the gods of the heathen are stone and brass, and any attempt to deal with them otherwise is justly condemned.
A Legend of Truth by Rudyard Kipling. Once on a time, the ancient legends tell, Truth, rising from the bottom of her well, looked on the world, but hearing how it lied, returned to her seclusion horrified. There she abode, so conscious of her worth, not even Pilate's question called her forth, nor Galileo kneeling to deny the laws that hold our planet 'neath the sky. Meantime, her kindlier sister, whom men call Fiction, did all her work, and more than all, with so much zeal, devotion, tact, and care, that no one noticed Truth was otherwhere. Then came a war when, bombed and gassed in mind, Truth rose once more perforce to meet mankind, and through the dust and glare and wreck of things beheld a phantom on unbalanced wings, reeling and groping, dazed, disheveled, dumb, but semaphoring dire deeds to come. Truth hailed and bade her stand. The quavering shade clung to her knees and babbled, Sister Aid, I was thy deputy, and men besought me for my useful tongue or pen to gloss their gentle deeds, and I complied, and they and thy demands were satisfied. But this, she pointed over the blistered plain, where men as gods and devils rot amain, this is beyond me. Take thy work again. Tablets and pens transferred, she fled afar, and Truth assumed the record of the war. She saw, she heard, she read, she tried to tell facts beyond precedent and parallel, unfit to hint or breathe, much less to write, but happening every minute, day and night. She called for proof, it came, the dossiers grew, she marked them first, return, this can't be true, then underneath the cold official word, this is not really half of what occurred. She faced herself at last, the story runs, and telegraphed her sister, come at once, facts out of hand, unable overtake without your aid. Come back for truth's own sake. Co-equal rank and powers if you agree. They need us both, but you far more than me. The Conundrum of the Workshops by Rudyard Kipling. When the flush of a newborn sun fell first on Eden's green and gold, our father Adam sat under the tree and scratched with a stick in the mold. And the first rude sketch that the world had seen was joy to his mighty heart, till the devil whispered behind the leaves, it's pretty, but is it art? Wherefore he called to his wife and fled to fashion his work anew, the first of his race who cared a fig for the first, most dread review. And he left his lore to the use of his sons, and that was a glorious gain. When the devil chuckled, is it art? In the ear of the branded Cain. They builded a tower to shiver the sky and wrench the stars apart, till the devil grunted behind the bricks, it's striking, but is it art? The stone was dropped at the quarry side, and the idle derrick swung, while each man talked of the aims of art, and each in an alien tongue. They fought and they talked in the north and the south, they talked and they fought in the west, till the waters rose on the pitiful land, and the poor red clay had rest till that dank blank canvas dawned when the dove was preened to start, and the devil bubbled below the keel. It's human, but is it art? The tale is as old as the Eden tree, and new as the new-cut tooth. For each man knows ere his lip thatch grows, he is master of art and truth. And each man hears as the twilight nears to the beat of his dying heart. The devil drum on the darkened pane, you did it, but was it art? We have learned to whittle the Eden tree to the shape of a surplice peg. We have learned to bottle our parents twain in the yolk of an addled egg. We know that the tail must wag the dog, for the horse is drawn by the cart. but the devil whoops as he whooped of old. It's clever, but is it art? When the flicker of London's sun falls faint on the club rooms is green and gold, the sons of Adam sit them down and scratch with their pins in the mold. They scratch with their pins in the mold of their graves, and the ink and the anguish start. For the devil mutters behind the leaves, it's pretty, but is it art? Now, if we could win to the Eden tree where the 4 great rivers flow, and the wreath of Eve is red on the turf as she left it long ago, and if we could come when the centuries slept and softly scurry through, by the favor of God we might know as much as our father Adam knew.
To the Evening Star by William Blake. Thou fair-haired angel of the evening, now, whilst the sun rests on the mountains, light thy bright torch of love, thy radiant crown, put on, and smile upon our evening bed. Smile on our loves, and while thou drawest the blue curtains of the sky, scatter thy silver dew on every flower that shuts its sweet eyes. In timely sleep, let thy west wings sleep on. The lake speak silence with thy glimmering eyes, and wash the dusk with silver. Soon, full soon, dost thou withdraw, then the wolf rages wide, and the lion glares through the dun forest. The fleeces of our flocks are covered with thy sacred dew. Protect with them with thine influence.
Mock on, Voltaire Rousseau by William Blake. Mock on, Voltaire Rousseau. Mock on, 'tis all in vain. You throw the sand against the wind, and the wind blows it back again. And every sand becomes a gem, reflected in the beams divine. Blown back they blind the mocking eye, but still in Israel's paths they shine. The atoms of Democritus and Newton's particles of light are sands upon the Red Sea shore, where Israel's tents do shine so bright. The Sky is an Immortal Tent built by the Sons of Loss by William Blake. The sky is an immortal tent built by the Sons of Loss, and every space that a man views around his dwelling place, standing on his own roof or in his garden on a mount of 25 cubits in height, such space is his universe. And on its verge the sun rises and sets. The clouds bow to meet the flat earth and the sea in such an ordered space. The starry heavens reach no further, but here bend and set on all sides, and the 2 poles turn on their valves of gold. And if he moves his dwelling place, his heavens also move, wherever he goes, and all his neighborhood bewail his loss. Such are the spaces called earth, and such its dimension. As to that false appearance which appears to the reasoner, as of a globe rolling through voidness, it is a delusion of Ulro. The microscope knows not of this, nor the telescope. They alter the ratio of the spectator's organs, but leave objects untouched. For every space larger than a red globule of man's blood is visionary, and is created by the hammer of loss. And every space smaller than a globule of man's blood opens into eternity, of which this vegetable earth is but a shadow. The red globule is the unwearied sun by loss, created to measure time and space to mortal men every morning.
Jerusalem, I see the fourfold man, the humanity in deadly sleep, by William Blake. I see the fourfold man, the humanity in deadly sleep, and its fallen emanation, the specter and its cruel shadow. I see the past, present, and future existing all at once before me. O divine Spirit, sustain me on thy wings, that I may awake Albion from his long and cold repose.
For Bacon and Newton, sheathed in dismal steel, their terrors hang, like iron scourges over Albion. Reasonings like vast serpents enfold around my limbs, bruising my minute articulations. I turn my eyes to the schools and universities of Europe, and there behold the loom of Locke, whose woof rages dire. Washed by the water wheels of Newton, black the cloth, in heavy wreaths folds over every nation. Cruel works, of many wheels I view, wheel without wheel, with cogs tyrannic, moving by compulsion each other, not as those in Eden, which wheel within wheel, in freedom revolve in harmony and peace.
Yesterday, across the crowd of the boulevard, I found myself touched by a mysterious being I had always desired to know, and whom I recognized immediately, in spite of the fact that I had never seen him. He had, I imagined, in himself, relatively as to me, a similar desire, for he gave me, in passing, so significant a sign in his eyes that I hastened to obey him. I followed him attentively, and soon I descended behind him into a subterranean dwelling, astonishing to me as a vision, where shone a luxury of which none of the actual houses in Paris could give me an approximate example. It seemed to me singular that I had passed so often that prodigious retreat without having discovered the entrance. There reigned an exquisite and almost stifling atmosphere, which made one forget almost instantaneously all the fastidious horrors of life. There I breathed a somber sensuality, like that of opium smokers when, set on the shore of an enchanted island over which shone an eternal afternoon, they felt born in them, to the soothing sounds of melodious cascades, the desire of never again seeing their households, their women, their children, and of never again being tossed on the decks of ships by storms. There were strange faces of men and women, gifted with so fatal a beauty that I seemed to have seen them years ago, and in countries which I failed to remember, and which inspired in me that curious sympathy and that equally curious sense of fear that I usually discover in unknown aspects. If I wanted to define in some fashion or other the singular expression of their eyes, I would say that never had I seen such magic radiance more energetically expressing the horror of ennui and of desire, of the immortal desire of feeling themselves alive. As for mine host and myself, we were already, as we sat down, as perfect friends, as if we had always known each other. We drank immeasurably of all sorts of extraordinary wines, and a thing not less bizarre, it seemed to me, after several hours, that I was no more intoxicated than he was. However, gambling, this superhuman pleasure, had cut, at various intervals, our copious libations, and I ought to say that I had gained and lost my soul as we were playing, with a heroic carelessness and light-heartedness. The soul is so invisible a thing, often useless and sometimes so troublesome, that I did not experience, as to this loss, more than that kind of emotion I might have, had I lost my visiting card in the street. We spent hours in smoking cigars whose incomparable savor and perfume give to the soul the nostalgia of unknown delights and sights, and, intoxicated by all these spice sauces, I dared, in an access of familiarity which did not seem to displease him, to cry, as I lifted a glass filled to the brim with wine, "To your immortal health, old he-goat." We talked of the universe, of its creation, and of its future destruction, of the leading ideas of the century, that is to say, of progress and perfectibility, and in general of all kinds of human infatuations. On this subject His Highness was inexhaustible in his irrefutable jests. and he expressed himself with a splendor of diction and with a magnificence in drollery such as I have never found in any of the most famous conversationalists of our age. He explained to me the absurdity of different philosophies that had so far taken possession of men's brains, and deigned even to take me in confidence in regard to certain fundamental principles, which I am not inclined to share with anyone. He complained in no way of the evil reputation under which he lived, indeed all over the world, and he assured me that he himself was of all living beings the most interested in the destruction of superstition, and he avowed to me that he had been afraid, relatively as to his proper power, once only, and that was on the day when he had heard a preacher, more subtle than the rest of the human heart, cry in his pulpit, "My dear brethren, do not forget, when you hear the progress of lights praised, that the loveliest trick of the devil is to persuade you that he does not exist." The memory of this famous orator brought us naturally on the subject of academies, and my strange host declared to me that he didn't disdain in many cases to inspire the pens, the words, and the consciences of pedagogues, and that he almost always assisted in person in spite of being invisible at all the scientific meetings. Encouraged by so much kindness, I asked him if he had any news of God, who has not his hours of impiety, especially as the old friend of the devil. He said to me with a shade of unconcern, united with a deeper shade of sadness, "We salute each other when we meet, but for the rest," he spoke in Hebrew, "it is uncertain if His Highness has ever given so long an audience to a simple mortal, and I feared to abuse it." Finally, as the dark approached, shivering, this famous personage, sung by so many poets and served by so many philosophers who work for his glory's sake without being aware of it, said to me, "I want you to remember me always, and to prove to you that I, of whom one says so much evil, am often enough bon diable to make use of one of your vulgar locutions, so as to make up for the irremediable loss that you have made of your soul. I shall give you back the stake you ought to have gained, if your fate had been fortunate. That is to say, the possibility of solacing and of conquering during your whole life this bizarre affection of ennui, which is the source of all your maladies and of all your miseries. Never a desire shall be formed by you that I will not aid you to realize. You will reign over your vulgar equals. Money and gold and diamonds, fairy palaces, shall come to seek you, and shall ask you to accept them without your having made the least effort to obtain them. You can change your abode as often as you like. You shall have in your power all sensualities without lassitude, in lands where the climate is always hot, and where the women are as scented as the flowers." With this he rose and said good-bye to me with a charming smile. If it had not been for the shame of humiliating myself before so immense an assembly, I might have voluntarily fallen at the feet of this generous gambler, to thank him for his unheard-of munificence. But little by little, after I had left him, an incurable defiance entered into me. I dared no longer believe in so prodigious a happiness, and as I went to bed, making over again my nightly prayer by means of all that remained in me in the matter of faith, I repeated in my slumber, "My God, my Lord, my God, do let the devil keep his word with me."